Alright, hey guys, and welcome to lecture 1. So last lecture we just got through logistics, but right now we're just going to discuss some important computer programming concepts, okay? So that's the introduction to OOP, which stands for Object-Oriented Programming, okay? Now, what are objects? So you actually interact with objects in code all the time. Flappy Bird, and most games in fact, have lots of objects. And this is going to be vague, and don't worry if you don't understand it yet, but an object knows what kind of object is, and a program knows what kind of object the object is as well. So, like, that you're a human, and the program knows that you're a human, that kind of thing, okay? And so the program can do certain things with different kinds of objects. It knows that you're a human, so it can tell you to walk, and that object will walk, okay? And just some key things to remember. So an object must be created by a programmer, or basically you. One type of object can have many objects at once. So that sounds confusing, but I'll go through over an example in the next slide. Okay, and there are many types of objects. So there are many types of objects, and each type can have many objects at once. Okay, so let's use an example and kind of go over that. So let's talk about tree objects and rock objects. Let's say we have a game, and this really could be any game, but I'm going to use Halo because that's the first game I used when explaining this concept, and they understood it pretty well. Okay, so let's say we have a game, and there are trees and rocks. Okay, there are tree objects and rock objects. Well, you're allowed to have multiple trees in the program because, not all trees are the exact same object, right? You have a tree behind you, a tree in front of you. These are different objects, and you can see them. You can see that they're different, and they're not exactly the same, right? One tree might be taller. One tree might have fewer leaves. It might be a different species of tree, right? But the object will take all that and keep it inside the object, and the program will know that it's a tree. Okay, and you'll know that it's a tree, and you'll be able to see all the differences. Okay, and then you're also allowed to have multiple rocks because not all rocks are the same, right? There are brown rocks, there are big rocks, there are small rocks, there are little pebbles, there are gray rocks, and these are all very different things. They're different objects, but they're two different types, right? There's a tree type and a rock type, and so you can have multiple trees and multiple rocks, and because there are lots of tree objects and lots of objects, it's able to work because rocks are not trees. They're two different types of things, and within each type you can have multiple objects. So why is that important? Well, you'll see very soon, but objects are extremely common in a lot of the programs we're going to write. Okay, now we're going to brainstorm. Okay, can you think of some objects in your favorite games? Okay, so we just talked about tree objects and rock objects. Can you think of some objects in your favorite games? And I'll give you a couple examples of games with objects, just food for thought. If you have, other games that you thought of that probably have objects, just, bear with me. Think about these as well. Okay, so Flappy Bird, Angry Birds, Halo, Checkers, Chess, Battleship, all these, programs, all these games have lots of objects in them. Okay, so just brainstorm for the next, 2 minutes. Talk to your neighbors right next to you, to your left, to your right. Reintroduce yourself if you guys have forgotten each other's names. And then shout out some ideas to the TA, okay? And we'll stop for about 5 minutes. We're going to pause right here and brainstorm. Alright, so I'm assuming you guys have come up with some ideas, and I'm going to go over a couple examples, okay? And so let's do that, okay? So what are some examples of objects? Well, let's see if you guessed any right. In Flappy Bird, you have birds, pipes, and the background. There are 3 definite objects right there. Each pipe is a separate object. Those are all different types of objects, okay? In Angry Birds, you have birds, pigs, obstacles, dynamite, hills. So like the obstacles would be like the wood, the steel, the ice, that kind of thing. In Halo, each enemy is an object, each gun is an object, grenades are all objects, vehicles are objects, and they're all very different types, right? In Checkers and Chess, each checker or chess piece is an object, The board itself is an object, so objects can have objects within them. That's a really important concept. And then in Battleship, your board is an object, your opponent's board is an object. They're two boards, but they're separate objects because they both have, your pieces and their pieces, that kind of thing. Each missile is an object, and the ships themselves are objects, right? The ship knows how many times it's been hit, and once it's been hit, the number of times that ship length, or the number of times it can be hit, it dies after that, right? And so those are some examples of objects. And then just one key point to remember before you guys start on this project, we can do actions to objects whenever events occur. So what's an event? Events are like clicks or tapping the spacebar or just anything, right? An event occurs, and then based on that event, we do actions to each of these objects, okay? So that's a brief overview, super introduction to like objects, what they are, why they're important, okay? Just a quick look at Flappy Bird now. Okay. Alright, so this is Flappy Bird. And, I mean, this is the game we're basically making. And what you do is you click on the screen, or you use the space bar, and you fly the bird as far as you can without hitting a pipe. Okay? So, if you guys haven't seen Flappy Bird at all, I'm terrible at it, but here. So I died, and basically, if I had passed that pipe, I would have had a score of 1. And so what's an object on the screen? Well, the ground is an object because when the bird hits this object, when this bird object hits the ground object, the whole game is supposed to crash and it exits, right? Or the pipe is an object, right? So if the bird hits the pipe, something bad happens. These are all events, right? And then the bird itself is an object. Whenever I click on the space bar, that's an event, and the Flappy Bird flaps. Okay, I am really bad at this. But yeah, you get the point. Okay, so that's what objects are. That's why they're important, and they're super duper common. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started.